Hello everybody, my name is Offbeat Outlaw. Welcome to a brand new gosh diddly darn video. I always laugh at the start of this because it's not like me laughing at my joke in a genuine way. It's ironic. I'm like, God, why do I talk? Today's a really fun video. I make a lot of tier lists. I made tier lists going through all of the classes and the multi-classes that they are viable with. But today is very interesting. Today I'm going to be giving my genuine opinions on the viability of classes as a whole. So if you have a problem with hardcore opinions, get out of here, snowflake. Today I'm going to be going through the classes as a whole and ranking them in a tier list as a whole. This is not to do with multi-classes, subclasses. This is just how good is the class in your average campaign. So here it is, definitive, starting with the Artificer. Oh, the Artificer. The Artificer is super interesting, super unique, in that it's kind of a support class. In a way, you use it to support your teammates with your magic items. It's not really a class that's viable on its own necessarily. It certainly does get a lot of unique stuff. Its subclasses, I find, are where you get most of whether or not you're going to play it as a support or a battle class, but that's just kind of the problem. Its abilities don't really stack or help itself. It is a class that, oddly enough, feels very much more like it plays like an out-of-combat support class, which is not really where you need support. Yes, making magic items is really useful, however, it's not going to help it very much in this ranking of the tier list, because in your average campaign, there's going to be an average amount of magic items to be found, so it's going to be a mismatch about whether or not it's useful. Hopefully you play it in a campaign where it's useful, but at the end of the day, it just feels very average. It's a class that can both support and do damage, but doesn't do either very well, and I feel like is the worst version of this class dichotomy that we see. However, it does have access to spells. It is still a very good class. It is still very useful. So I think it's still it's still B class. I think it's B tier. Very solid. Next class, we have the Barbarian. The Barbarian is one of the premier martial classes. It is the frontline attacker. It is the frontliner, the tank of the D&D classes, with the best damage negation ability in the entire game, just taking half damage from most physical attacks. And depending on your subclass, all damage except psychic. It's so good. It's so useful. The Barbarian's Rage is one of the best abilities in Dungeons & Dragons. Out of all of the possible abilities, it is so good. It is the bread and butter of the Barbarian. It allows it to do extra damage on strength attacks. If I was considering multi-classing, it's also pretty good. However, it does find itself lacking in damage when comparing it to some of the other martials we're going to be seeing. However, it still manages to keep up, and with the help of its subclasses, it does keep up, making the Barbarian, in my opinion, with its ability to tank, its ability to shrug off damage, its survivability, its all-around usefulness, A tier. It is a great class, and it's a tank, so it's you're not going to be going down, you're not going to be a hindrance to your party, you're definitely going to be helping them out. Next up, we have the Bard. The Bard, if you remember me ranking in my last tier list that covered all of the classes, it was about multi-classing, and I ranked the Bard as God tier for the reason that its abilities are so universally applicable. The Bard has universal application. All of its subclasses will allow you to play whatever playstyle you want. Do you want to play like a martial? Do you want to play like a spellcaster? Do you want to play support? This is what the Artificer almost tried to be. It wanted to be this all-around jack-of-all-trades class, but it does not have the stuff to pull it off, unlike the Bard. The Bard can pull it off, and this is mostly accomplished through its Bardic Inspiration dice, a bonus action ability that allows it to support your team while you use your action to still do other stuff. Expertise is great. Magical Secrets is great. Spellcasting in Dungeons & Dragons 5th is great as a whole. It's just an all-around, incredibly good class. And if you play it, you can do damage, you can do control, you can do anything you want, really. It's the Bard. Easy pick, in my opinion, for a God tier pick. Next up, the Cleric. The Cleric is another really good class, another spellcaster. You're gonna see that spellcasters kind of do really well in 5th edition. Spellcasting as a whole is really good in 5th, as well as the fact that the Cleric gets access to the powerful Cleric spell list, getting access to powerful cantrips like Guidance, and spells like Guiding Bolts. A lot of guiding going on. But also the Cleric gets access to one of the best abilities in the game, Channel Divinity. Channel Divinity is basically, I want to be God for a moment. And boy howdy, does the Cleric do that. If you just want to be God, the Cleric has that. In fact, as its 10th level ability, it can literally call upon a Deus Ex Machina. Okay. The Cleric's good, okay? I don't think anyone's going to debate the fact that the Cleric is good. But how good is the Cleric? Well, considering the fact that it can do damage, considering the fact it can do control, it also has the potent ability to heal, which is very necessary in 5th. And then on top of that, its channel divinities are good at supporting and doing damage and just all around being a pester to your dungeon master. I think we have another entry into the God tier class. The Cleric is a definitive God tier. Next up, we have the Druid. The Druid is another really good class. Another full caster at that. Full casters, like I said, very good. They have access to 9th level spell slots at 20th level, all very good. Being a 20th level caster is always going to be good. Most of you have access to Wish. Wish being good. All full casters are going to do really well. But how good is the Druid in comparison to the other full casters? Well, I think the Druid lacks that innate X factor required to be a God tier class. Wild Shape is certainly very useful. However, it's not as universally applicable unless you try to make it be. The Moon Druid being the only subclass that I would truly place as God tier. But we're not ranking just the Moon Druid, we're ranking every subclass. The Moon Druid is certainly very useful, as are all of the subclasses for the Druid, but most of the Druid subclasses I find end up being more or less mediocre rather than just strictly useful. So as a result, while the Druid can certainly perform very well, can it perform better than the other full casters? And my answer is, if you're comparing it to the Bard and the Cleric, I say no. I say it's better than the Artificer, but I don't think it's as good as the Bard or the Cleric. I think that the Druid sits comfortably in A tier. And this is because of the fact that the Druid's Wild Shape, its like main defining ability that makes it different from the other classes, is not as good as the Bard or the Cleric's abilities. It is still quite good. It's still A tier. I just don't think it has the versatility and the overall just power that the Cleric and the Bard has. Next up, we have the Fighter, another martial class. Now, I'm gonna lay my biases up front. I love the Fighter. Fighter is my favorite class in Dungeons & Dragons. Am I boring? Probably. Is it good? Yes. Easily one of the highest single target damage classes in the entire game. If you're going to be comparing a 20th level fighter to a 20th level caster for damage, the 20th level fighter will give the caster a run for its money. With action surge allowing it to get a whole nother action as well, you don't just have to use that for attacking. You can use that for casting a spell that can help heal your teammates. You can use that for pulling the lever. You can use that for a dash. You get 2 of those at 20th, 1 of those at 2nd, which is beyond useful for multiclassing. We're not considering multiclassing though, but it's beyond useful just to have at any point in time in your campaign. Action Surge immediately guaranteed bumps it to at least B tier alone. I think some of its other features are what makes it settle comfortably into A tier. I don't think it's God tier. I don't think the Fighter is God tier for this fact that it does not have access to great control options outside of a few niches, out of a few subclasses. It doesn't have the overall versatility that the Cleric and the Bard has. However, it does its job very well, putting damage on the boss, as well as just being able to output its action surge and doing its damage that it needs to do. And for those who are saying, oh, well, you only get those back in short rests. Well, a standard adventuring day, there are 2 short rests. This is the standard that I am using for this list, meaning that you get, once you wake up from your long rest, you have 2 action surges. Short rest, 2 more. Short rest again, 2 more. 6 action surges per day. Is that a lot? Fuck yeah, it is. But that's how many you're supposed to get. 2 short rests per adventuring day, meaning that that you can output over 100+ damage 6 times in your day, whereas some classes can only do that once per long rest. This makes the Fighter, in my opinion, a standout pick as an A tier. On the other end of the spectrum, we got the Monk. Hi, Monk mains. Hi, guys. This is the part where I make fun of you. I'm not sorry. I am not sorry. Monk mains, Monk mains, Monk mains. What are we gonna do with you? Look, the Monk, I'm gonna say this right now, is the worst. The worst class in 5th edition. For a few reasons. First of all, it's not great at group control. The best it can do is Stunning Strike. Stunning Strike costs a key point to use. At 20th level, you have 20 of those, and you use them for all of your abilities. The most amount of attacks that you can get in a turn is 4. 4 attacks. Some casters can get up to 12 easily. 4? Really? That's all you're putting out, Monk? So it's obviously not doing damage. Don't tell me, well, the Away of the Open Hand can one-hit kill monsters. First of all, that's one subclass. Second of all, if it fails, that only does 55 damage, which can be beaten by a level 5 fighter. Third of all, you only really are going to be using that on bosses. And even at 20th level, they usually have legendary resistances. And a smart dungeon master is saving their legendary resistances for your monk's open palm, meaning that it's never gonna land ever. And you want to know what's also really good at killing monsters? Killing them, which almost every other class can do better. It's the same reason why Power Word Kill is not a good spell. It can only kill if they are below 100 points of damage. Most classes at level 20 can do over 100 points in damage in a single turn. So why waste your 9th level spell slot on something you could do very easily with another spell? Anyway, so the monk can't do damage. Its only control option is Stunning Strike, which is bad. It's not bad. It's okay. It's pretty okay. And then it can make saving throws. Well, fun fact, so can the Paladin. The Paladin has an ability which gives its charisma bonus to everybody in the party, to everybody within 10 feet of it, including itself. And that can be a +4 very easily by level 5. +4, which is the equivalent to a 9th level proficiency, which the Paladin gets at level 6, 8 levels sooner than your monk's ability, and the Paladin gives it to the party. So if you want to do that, be a Paladin, don't be a monk. Well, the monk can walk on walls. Wizards can fly. They can fly. Well, they can move really fast. So can a rogue. In fact, the only unique ability to the monk is Stunning Strike and Patient Defense. And even those two aren't great. I don't know what to say. The monk just is not a good class. Everything that it tries to do, it's bested at by every other class. D tier. Easily. Now, here's the thing. I don't want people to get confused and think this is me saying, don't ever play a monk. That's not what I'm saying. I play monks as well. I play every class in this game because I like this game. This is me saying that in a setting where you are comparing the numbers of the classes and their overall usefulness, the monk fails. However, does that mean you're not going to have fun when playing a monk? No. You're gonna have a lot of fun playing the monk. You're gonna have a lot of fun playing Dungeons and Dragons because Dungeons and Dragons is a fun ass game. So play whatever you want. The point of this list is to analyze the classes and rank them respectively. You're still gonna have fun playing it. You still are gonna be able to have fun in your games, and you'll still be able to be useful to the party. I'm just saying that respectively, and objectively, this class isn't very good. Now, with that disclaimer out of the way, monks suck. Next one, Paladin. Yeah, we mentioned Paladins, didn't we? Paladins are excellent. As a dungeon master, I struggle personally to deal with Paladins and how to make challenges for them. Their Aura of Protection is a god tier ability that gives their charisma bonus to everyone in the party's saving throws. Now, depending on your campaign, this can be a +5 by level 8. Holy crap, your entire party getting an extra +5 to their saving throws. It's hard to throw monsters at them at that point. It's hard to throw spellcasters at that point, because they're just gonna make the saves and absolutely dick on your monster. So now you're forced to throw attack roll creatures at them, which is fine, but it's annoying. Aura Protection alone keeps Paladin from being below B tier. Now we throw on top of the fact that it has access to spells, and the fact that it has access to divine smites, and the fact that it has a really hefty health pool. It just can do a lot. It is a very, very useful class, and it has access to a lot of stuff. And if we're ranking how good at multi-classes, oh boy, does it do good. But we're not. But we're ranking it against all the other classes. And I'm looking at this and I'm trying to decide whether or not it's A or B, or A tier or God tier. Because it can help the party. It can put on damage on the boss. It can use spells. It has Channel Divinity. I don't know what I would say this other than it's God tier. Easy. I think it's easily a god tier pick. It's just too good. It doesn't really have a weakness. It doesn't really have a spot where I'm like, yeah, that's a glaring hole. It can do it all, and it can do it all well. Next class, we have the Ranger. Ranger has historically had a terrible reputation within 5th edition. This is because of the notoriously pretty mediocre Beastmaster class published with the initial player's handbook. And it's pretty bad. However, since then, there have been much better classes that have come out. The Gloomstalker being incredibly potent, the Horizon Walker being really good, Monster Slayer being pretty decent, the Swarm Keeper, the Fey Walker, all of these subclasses are really good. And with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, they have completely overhauled a lot of their abilities and just made the Ranger really good. It can do a lot now. It's no longer that wimpy class that could barely kill a monster. Now it's dealing sizable chunks of damage. It is one of the few classes that has access to 3 attacks at 5th level. It is really good. However, it still has a lot of the hang-ups. Its damage doesn't scale very well. It scales pretty poorly, if I'm being honest. Doesn't get more attacks. It gets better at exploration and tracking. However, that's not always the most important part of a game. I think Rangers just end up being astonishingly okay. I think the Ranger finds itself right at home in B tier. I think there's no problem with being a B tier class, and I think the Ranger represents what it means to be a B tier perfectly. Not necessarily terrible, not necessarily bad. It's just kind of, it exists, and it's a pick that you can take, and you will figure out ways to make it optimize and work for you. Next up, we have the Rogue. Ooh, baby, where does the Rogue go? Now, I'm thinking about the Rogue. I think about the Rogue a lot. The Rogue has access to some of the most damage on a single hit in the entire game. No one is taking that away from the Rogue. Okay, no one is looking at the Rogue and saying, oh, it won't do damage in a single hit, because it can. It can do a lot of damage in a single turn. And with optimizations with stuff like Booming Blade, it can do a ridiculous amount of damage in a single turn. Don't want to oh boy, Shadow Blade on top of that, and it's dunzos, baby. It's curtains. But does that make it really good? Well, the damage alone is, you've heard me say this before, I'm going to say it again, mediocre. It can do about 50 to 60 damage in a single turn at max level, which is pretty okay. Subclasses are being irrelevant in this situation. With subclasses, assassins can do the most, but that's only if they're surprised. Without the surprise, it's once again pretty mediocre. Critting with a rogue is really fun, and it's certainly nice to roll lots of dice. However, in combat, they can end up, first of all, their playstyle is pretty lame. No offense, rogue, but they just end up not really having the damage ramping that some of the other classes have, and they can sometimes feel to lack a unique sort of feeling in combat at any rate. They just seem to be lacking in combat areas. However, they do quite well outside of combat, being very good for breaking in, entering, thievery, stealth, dungeon crawling, generally disarming stuff with their traps. They got that in the bag. However, is it God tier, or is it A tier, or is it worse? I don't know. I don't know where to put it. Is it A tier or B tier? It's not God tier. It doesn't have the output. It's not damage output. It can't use it. It's not very good at doing control stuff either. You know what? I'll say it's the bottom of A tier. These aren't ranked necessarily within the rank, but we'll know in our hearts that the rogue's at the bottom of A tier. It's okay, I think. It's the rogue is certainly fun. It certainly has stuff you can do. It has ways you can capitalize on its abilities. It just doesn't necessarily outperform any of the other classes, and it doesn't really stack very well with many of the other classes in combination. As a chance, I don't think it has necessarily the all-around wow factor that the Cleric, the Bard, and the Paladin have. And I do think it's sincerely worse than the Fighter. Oh, no, get back there. You're not that good, Fighter. Next class, the Sorcerer. Oh, man, the Sorcerer. Oh, no. People are not gonna like this. All right, Sorcerers. I'm gonna be real here. You're worse than Rangers. I mean that. I really do. Sorcerers, think carefully, okay? Before you type out your angry rage comment, think about it. You have the worst spell list in the game. You are beaten in every category by wizards. The only thing you have is metamagic. Metamagic is not only accessible as a feat nowadays, and you only really need to use metamagic once per day if you're taking it as a feat. On top of that, your metamagic doesn't scale. This is the worst part about the Sorcerer. its meta magic options do not scale to level, meaning the meta magic you had access to at level 3 is the same level of powerful by level fucking 20. Talk about a missed opportunity. On top of that, they're not even very good. Quicken spell's alright, twin spell's pretty good, and subtle spell's useful, but transmute spell? Really? It's only useful in like 5 enemies. Most of you are gonna have access to spells that do different types of damage anyway. Why do you need it? Empowered spell is fun to make them roll at disadvantage. Is that really better than just casting another spell with quicken spell? I just feel like most of these abilities overlap with each other in terms of their usefulness, and I think that overall it can be done better. I feel like the fact that they don't scale makes the sorcerer feel very identical depending on its level. Oh, but you have more spell slots. Okay, you have a few more spell slots. Don't have that many more spell slots. While it may be useful in some of the levels of play, of level 5 to 10, level 10 plus, you're gonna start falling off the wagon unless you multi-class. Yeah, I'm gonna quicken spell everything and whatnot, but your damage is gonna still be capped to roughly whatever the average is. There's no way to stack or get more damage. It just gets more and more difficult. I don't know, it just doesn't feel like the sorcerer has any defining features. And also, we gotta remember that we're not ranking these necessarily in a vacuum. We gotta look at all of these classes that are above it and think, what do they all do? Well, the Bard has such universal appeal and usefulness as a support and damage class at the same time that there's no reason why it can't be a god tier. Clerics have access to divine interventions, which are so useful it makes it a god tier. Paladins are the best support damage class in the game. There's no tanking like a Barbarian. Druids can wild shape. Fighters have some of the most single target damage in the game. Rogues have got out of combat utility as well as in combat damage, and running around is useful. Now we gotta look at B tier. Artificers can do a lot, but they can't do a lot well. Rangers are in a similar boat to Artificers. Sorcerers. Look, all I'm saying is once the Wizard comes around, why the hell are you playing a Sorcerer? Other than for flavor. The Wizard is just better. It has a better spell list, better spells, better ability, it's better subclasses. What's the Sorcerer got that the Wizard don't? And if that's, once we realize that, the only thing the Sorcerer is useful for is multiclassing. And even then, Metamagic Adept will cover most multiclassers' needs. For that reason, I think it's C tier. It has spells, which makes it better than Monk. It has spells, which definitively makes it better than Monk. But I don't think you can argue that it's better than even an Artificer, in my opinion. It's very hard to argue that, in my opinion. Next up, we have Warlock. Warlock. Oh, I know the jokes are incoming. He has 2 spell slots. Yeah, level 5. Level 5 pumpkin. Let's look at level 20, why don't we? At level 20, the Warlock has 4 spell slots, which is quite a lot for a Warlock. This as well, remember, is that their spell slots come back on short rests, meaning they get 6 per day if at 5th level. And then once you get to 20th level, that means 12 per day. That's quite a lot of spell slots if you ask me, considering they come back on a short rest. Warlocks as well. Highest damage subclasses in the game, what with Hexblade just being a proficiency bonus to your extra damage at the cost of a bonus action. That's insane. That's insane. I don't know why they did that, but it's so good. Warlocks have some of the best damage in the game. They have some of the best damage classes. They have access to the best cantrip in the game, being Eldritch Blast, one that can push, pull, slow, do crap tons of damage, have some of the longest distance in the game. It can do it all, honestly. So I think the Warlock has just got a lot of options that make it so good. However, we can't just ignore the limited spell slots. Most of them are going to go to combat. You might use 1 in combat, and then you might use 1 out of combat, and it kind of makes the Warlock feel very limited. And these limitations, while not impossible to overcome, I think severely hinder the class as a whole. To me, the Warlock, if you just are comparing flat out, I think it ends up being just high B tier. I would personally rank high B tier, although its single target damage is really good. The Warlock is hard. I don't know if it's A tier or B tier. You know what? I think the Warlock pushes the Rogue out of A tier, because I think the Warlock's better than the Rogue, because it has access to spells in all, no matter the subclass. The fact that its damage can end up being better, if you play your cards right and use your spells properly. You take the right Mystic Mystic Arcanums. It has access to Wish. That's really good if you're a Genie Warlock. I think at the end of the day, I think the Warlock just has access to really solid damage options and really solid utility options, and the spell slot thing, as long as you're getting your sleeps in, can be quite useful. However, it doesn't have the necessary wow factor that can really put it over the edge into God tier. All right, next class, final class, the Wizard. Fucking hate wizards. I do. But game recognizes game, and wizards are God tier. In fact, I can safely say they're the top of God tier. They're the best class in the game, and there's no questions about it. It's way too good. It's so good. It can do every job. Damage, control, hell, tanking with the right subclass. It's so good. What can't it do? It has a wish, for God's sakes. It can do anything. It can do any job available that you would possibly want within your party. The wizard could do it. It's got low health. Most of your health comes from, not from your damage dice, but from your constitution modifier, not from your damage dice. So with that in mind, it's still, with the right build, the wizard can still have a lot of health and do a shitload of damage. Wizard can do it all. It can support, it can control, it can do damage. There isn't a lot the wizard can't do, and I think that just means that's God tier. I don't think there's really, I'm surprised I just haven't seen in my power build fantasy mission series someone just submit a level 20 wizard, because there's rarely a build better than a level 20 wizard. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching. This is my official tier list of the best classes in Dungeons and Dragons, and the classes in Dungeons and Dragons ranked. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you want me to definitely read it, leave a nasty little comment telling me I'm a stinky little poo-poo baby, and then I'll definitely read it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what other tier lists you want to see in the future. Bing the bell, tell your friends, and remember, patrons saw this video 24 hours early. So if you want to see this video, my future videos 24 hours early, go become a patron today. Link in the description. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day. Get the fuck out of my house.